So now we're gonna be doing chapter 10. Ball games as symbols. The War of the Balls. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing presents the ISIS papers. And I just want to start this chapter discussion by reading the dedication that's on page 131, the first page of the chapter.
Can I make a quick comment before you read?
Go for it, of course.
I knew there was a reason why I never liked sports. That is all.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like subconsciously I knew something was going on, Indigo child or indigo children, whatever you want to call it, something's off. Dedication. This chapter is dedicated to all of the Black men who, through sports and through ball games in particular, symbolically are recapturing the boss, for that is also a part of the struggle. They are forcing the oppressors of Black people up against a psychological wall and thereby heightening the contradiction. Ooh, all right. So, what this means to me is that these Black men are being paid millions of dollars to participate in the entertainment aspect within the white supremacy system culture, and they are basically dominating in sports. And if they're winning these games, they are proving their genetic superiority over white people and people classify themselves as white. Um, and we'll get through that a lot during our discussion. But how does this statement, the dedication, how does that resonate with you guys? What does it mean to you, etc., etc.?
Well, for me, I've always had to like live around people watching sports and that kind of being forced on me. I feel like at some points I only got into sports to be able to like conversate with some of like my relatives, like brothers and stuff like that, or like get into it because that's what everybody is around doing. And just that whole energy around sports is we take it so seriously as if it's life or literally life or death. And Dr. Frances Cress Welsing literally says that. I want to just read literally that comment that she makes. She was like, the high level anxiety of fear of white genetic annihilation must be played out symbolically as if it's life or death. And as soon as I read that, it just resonated so much, like the level of the fights that people get into after football games, the fact that we all like, it's American culture to like sit around and watch all those football games, and the fact that I have to see that on like say The Simpsons, like there's so much attention that's put around sports on so many levels that you can't get away from it. You cannot not don't have to speak English to understand what American football is, basketball is, football, soccer. Literally, it's embedded into everything we do, and the fact that we've been like participating in it blindly and giving it that much energy, where there's people who like the fact that white supremacy has built up symbology within these games. It's constantly been that intention, and it's constantly been that energy that's been put into it. And so just imagine like on a metaphysical level, the way that we have been affecting their intentions in these games.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I had I just realized I just may have discovered a new like, have you guys ever watched people watch like who are watching sports and then they have their hands in their pants, men particularly. I'm like, is that a manifestation of like, because sports is all about the testicles and whatnot, and it would make sense that that while they're playing watching sports, they have their hands subconsciously on their testicles. Or am I reaching a little bit?
Well, I think, but in context of unified field theory, I think you're right. I think that I haven't watched sports in a long time, nor have I been in a group of people who watch the sports, so I haven't had the opportunity to analyze or observe that phenomenon. Um, Ben.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, we grab our stuff, we hold on to it tight. Constantly.
But why? And they're like,
We're scared they're gonna take it from us, you know.
mm,
You're gonna cut it out, right? Especially in baseball. Every baseball player that comes up to bat in particular, sometimes the pitchers do it, but 9 out of 10 of the times when the batter comes up, he'll grab his stuff and, you know, make contact with his stuff while he's adjusting to bat. And you know, when Mary was sharing, you know, this connects to the baseball. Why is it that, especially in Europe, and I think in England in particular, in some cases, when there's a big game, after the game, there's a huge riot. I mean, herds of people trampling each other. I mean, people die in those things, right? And it's almost like, after reading this, it's almost like it's because they won the war. They won the slaves. They actually won the you know, they got the spoils, which is they prove that they have the bigger dick, and they you know, because that net is the vagina, right?
yeah.
And so because we lost, we're completely outraged and we're gonna riot. And in baseball, it's like, you know, that bat is your phallus, you know, and when you hit that white ball out of the park and you're a black player, you crush that white ball. Oh man. And if you notice, like when I was growing up, the San Francisco Giants had an all black baseball team, and this was in the 70s. They recognized that. They recognized the power, not so much football, not so much basketball, which are slave sports, but those contracts in baseball have gotten up to 250 to 300 million dollar contracts to hit a little ball and sit in the dugout, and you know, easy money. Not like football and basketball. Even soccer is hard. Baseball is easy money. So if you notice, there might be one Black American on two or three Black Americans on these teams. They've systematically weeded out Black Americans from playing baseball because it is the ultimate expression of crushing the white ball.
Yeah. Brilliant stuff, Ben. And this chapter for me, like like what Ben said with the riots, it showed me how can people riot over a game. To me, it's more than a game. This is a war game. Like and like I know I see it as this: whenever a team is performing on the field or the courts, there's a white team and there's a black team. I don't know how it works. I don't know how it is set up, but subconsciously and unconsciously, when people are watching these sports, they are imagining a black side and a white side. The black people, if the black people win, then the black people riot. They have fun. They dance on top of cars. They celebrate. If the white team loses, the white crowd just tips over cars, rampages through the streets, and it makes sense. And what Ben was saying, like symbolically, all sports are playing out racism, white supremacy. All sports are playing out racism, white supremacy in a symbolic fashion. Basketball, for example, the brown ball represents the genetic makeup of Black people. the goal is to get that brown ball into the white net, which symbolizes the white vagina. By doing that, you are spreading you're spreading black genetic makeup. It's the goal of the players is to like stop that ball from getting into the net. It's the goal of the players to dribble that ball across the court. It's symbolically showing like reproduction. It's a very, very interesting sport. And back into baseball. Notice how when you see sports and the ball is white, the goal is to hit the ball. The goal is to get the ball away from you. And basketball, you want to keep the ball until you get to the net. And football, which is also a brown ball, you want to keep the ball with you. You want to keep it with you, and then you want to get to the field where the two spikes are. Those two spikes are symbolically represents white women's legs. Like white people they fear black men having sex with white women. And but back to baseball. Baseball, you have a brown or black bat hitting a white ball, as Ben said, out of the park, and breaking them. Sometimes the ball explodes because they hit so hard. And in soccer, you have this white ball being kicked, stomped, and forced against this field up into once again a white net. All of these games symbolically represent the race to preserve your genetic makeup. Sex, getting these balls into holes, getting these balls away from you. In golf, you have a long iron. Basically, you have an iron which is used to hit the white ball. Once again, the white ball is always being attacked, always being smacked, bopped, and booped across the field. The goal of golf is to hit this ball, this tiny white ball, into a tiny hole in the grass, which symbolizes Black women, symbolizes Mother Earth. And notice how you use a long black stick to hit a tiny white ball in the context of golf, in the context of baseball as well. What else? There's so much symbolism in these games.
Yeah, I'd also like to draw attention to, like, we call it rugby, but you call it football. The brown ball that you get through the legs, the job of the players is to stop it by any means necessary, which is like piling on top of each other, literally preventing that crossing. Is like just that symbolism alone just shows the aggression towards the fear of their genetic annihilation.
Yeah. Also notice the size of the balls.
Yeah.
White people collectively see Black male genitalia as being superior. That's why there's the sayings, once you go Black, you never go back. All these sayings. Basically, they say, and within the white supremacy culture, it is known that you are not a man until you have had sex with a Black woman. This is what white men say to each other. This is what white fathers tell their white sons. This is a manifestation of white supremacy. You're not a man until you dominate a Black woman. That's what I hear. I don't hear having sex. I hear dominate. That's what it is. And that's what golf is. Golf is a symbolic practice of a white ball making its way inside, the Mother Earth, the hole in the grass. Sports. All these sports have symbols. Oh yeah, the sizes. Notice how when the balls are white, they're small. Soccer, ping pong, baseball, and also tennis. Don't forget, tennis used to be a white ball. Now it's green. It was only made green in 1970s when Ash Arthur, I think his name was, he became a championship at tennis, and the white collective psyche cannot tolerate that aspect of a Black man smacking this white ball with like so much fierceness and so much power and dominating in the sport. They have to actually change the ball from white to green because your subconscious, they knew what it represented. It represented their destruction. Also, ping pong, another sport where you have a tiny white ball being smacked around. And all the games with the balls are bound are black. Keep in mind the balls always handled with care. Bowling, giant black ball knocks over all the white pins. You handle that ball with care. Basketball, you handle that ball with care. You transport it elegantly across the field. Football, you sacrifice your body to protect this ball. So this is all projections of the white supremacy system and culture. Sports are a major projection of white supremacy and how it's played out. These are not merely sports; they are war games. These are war games, you know, as Dr. Frances Cress puts in her book. These are war games.
I'd just like to piggyback off what you said about
Mhm.
the game of ping pong and bear with me. Yeah, and the game of tennis. So Serena Williams, look how much, like just how you mentioned Ash, they collectively couldn't handle it and had to change it from a white to a green ball. Like we see how they cannot handle the way that Serena Williams and her family have dominated the field of tennis. And the fact, I don't know if you guys are aware of her like counterpart that she usually plays, Maria Stopopov.
Yeah,
I
I
can't
know, I
pronounce.
know, I know the racist white woman that she plays against. I know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So we see, you know, Serena's track record in terms of like pay and endorsement. The Maria woman receives so much more endorsements than Serena Williams, and just look, and even despite the fact that Serena Williams literally wins almost in each and every time, and the fact that just looking at that disparity just shows like the way that they hate on the black woman, if even if they do allow them to dominate in their fields for the sake of just boosting the economy of sports. Like just the fact that the most of these fields are dominated by our black counterparts. Just and one thing that Dr. Frances Cress Welsing mentions in terms of why that's okay and why that she has kind of allowed that black people can dominate within all these fields is as long as the managers remain white, then the symbolism still remains that these people belong to me. So I thought that was very important
oh yeah.
to highlight, because I did think about the fact that, okay, well, they can despair in terms of endorsement and how much they pay them, but they're very much allowing them to like play full front for these roles and represent whole countries. Like we know how racist France can be and is in terms of like how their political parties are trying to move more right wing. They I can't remember how many the previous World Cup, France, when they had won against whatever team, the predominant demographic in their team were black people, black West Africans. And they were having like a really bad immigration issue, and it just was really funny how you allow them to represent you in your like most major sports, but you won't even allow like a clean naturalization to happen so they can be full citizens in the country.
Yeah, I want to talk about at some points in basketball when the championship is won. You have a white man handing off a golden giant ball to another white man. And this year, instead of that happening, you had a white man giving a giant gold ball to the white woman. You know, racist white supremacy has to maintain the system. And
Absolutely.
and this time they even let the black players touch the ball before the white woman touched the ball. You know, so and also I want to talk about the self-hate aspect surrounding why and the sports involving the white balls. We see the balls being like hit, smacked, crushed, and thrown and hit as far as away from the person as possible. Whereas in as Trey put in the other sports games, we see the balls being like handled with care and protected. And I think that's a good way to point out how it is like perhaps in the nature of white supremacy for them to hate themselves, for them to like project their self hate into a reality where we could easily like oh yeah see that manifest, because like this is a huge indication of like self hate and seeing yourself as less than projecting your genitals into such light where you're attacking them and wanting them to go away from you as far as possible.
Yep. You guys are all been sharing great points. I do think this is very important to read so we get a glimpse into the white psyche and how it's obsessed with genitals. It's obsessed with genetic makeup. It's obsessed with things that carry genetic makeup, aka it's obsessed with the boss. I think let me just read all of it because it is very important. Genetic annihilation and the white psyche. The global white supremacy system and culture is the sum total of the conscious as well as the unconscious tactics, strategies, and methodologies evolved in all areas of people activity. Additionally, these maneuvers seek to prevent white genetic annihilation and attempt to resolve the psychological anxiety and tension related to the ever-present threat. Thus, the task of white supremacy domination required constant vigilance. The deep pervading fear of white genetic annihilation and the white psyche has caused a neurotic, unconscious preoccupation with genes, genetic material, and those aspects of the human autonomy that either contain or transport the genetic material and the sexual act, the act of self-reproduction or self-annihilation as a possibility in the case of whites. Since Black or other males of color are the only ones who can actually initiate and carry forth the act of white genetic annihilation through sexual intercourse, the white preoccupation is specifically white male genitalia as opposed to female, namely the testicles, the balls, and the penis. So because of white people's fear of going extinct due to their insufficient genes and their inability to produce melanin, their psyche has been constantly plagued with thoughts of balls, dicks, and things that transport genetic makeup. And it's the reason why we have sports, you know. So that was important to share that. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, my thoughts is how do we bring this more to people's attention, the intention of the symbolism of these games?
Great question. I personally don't think that's like a priority. Getting people to talk about racism, white supremacy is a priority, and then this comes a bit later, I think. But if you wanted to talk about sports, I think the best one to examine would be pool, because pool is the most simplest display of genocide in a war game, in a race war. For example, in pool, you have a long black stick, to me, which symbolizes the black male phallus, the black penis. And you have this black stick smacking around like a little white ball. And the goal is to knock all the colored balls off the field. The field represents planet Earth. And before you can knock the black ball off the field, you have to knock all the colored balls off the field. And you are penalized whenever the white ball falls off the field. So pool to me is a game where it starts off with a colorful, multicultural world. You have black people, red people, purple people, green people, all these people, by the way. These balls symbolize people, just in case you guys didn't know. And the goal is to get rid of them, is to get them off the field. And pool to me is the most simplest, easiest way to see a race war playing out in the form of a sports game. You have white ball that is in charge of knocking the colored balls out of play, out of the game. As well as bowling. Bowling is more of the fear aspect. You have white people already think black males have superior genitalia, So you have this giant black ball that you roll down the field, and what is the goal is to do it? The goal is to obliterate all the white pins, knock them down, and those pins do represent and symbolize the white male phallic symbol. It also could, symbolize the I don't know what it's called. I don't know what the hole is called where the ball goes, but that could be considered the vagina. But the goal is to get rid of these white penises so you can make entrance into this black portal hole. You know.
Mm.
I think that was a great sports lecture. Thanks, Trey.
Yeah. Yeah, thank that, especially the articulation about the pool game.
Mean everything.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to draw attention to something that you had just said. Bear with me one moment. I'll come back. Please continue. The thoughts left me. I'll get back to it.
Then what sport have to do with?
No, what's it to do?
I'm gonna go ahead and read this part because this gives it kind of supports what I've been saying. It supports what I've been saying, and
Yeah, sorry, I remembered what I was going to say.
Go for it.
I do think that it's a bit of a priority. It may not be an exact priority, but I do feel like knowledge on the true intentions of certain sports is important because of the fact of the young children growing up today. Maybe they are someone who is to be alert, because society and the government's like greater messages that we'll give you a scholarship if you play basketball, if you play football.
Okay, yeah.
If they lull like children into these sports as opposed to like being a doctor, architect, something of a deeper substance that can allow them to self-govern, as opposed to constantly be looking at whether or not they're going to be drafted on the bench, be sent over here, sent on that team. Like literally, it's like passing them into a form of slavery. Mm-hmm. So I feel like education to the younger generations is important, because what they have right now that's selling it to them is the pay differences between being a teacher and being there. We're literally having this conversation.
Yeah,
but that's why it should be a form of a priority.
Yeah, just tell you. I would say whenever you see a parent who's thinking about getting their children's in sports, just tell them the background behind sports and know what it represents, and know that it's gonna in the long term like damage the body, especially if it's football. But I do understand that it is important because so many people consume sports and they're literally participating in their own genocide and their own oppression by doing so, especially while doing so blindly, and supporting these teams owned by modern day slavers, you know on new more fancy plantations, fancy plantation, but still the same game about slavery and practicing white supremacy.
Yeah, thank you.
I share a passage right here on page 133.
Yep.
Play and games. This is kind of just elaborating on what Mary was saying. Play and games then become the child's unconscious attempt to master the environment, its conflicts and threats to the child's sense of security. Those who have taken the trouble to study games throughout the world realize that not only the play and games of children, but most specifically the games in adult life, as participated in by a given people, reflect their history, folklore, traditions, and conflicts. Okay, and this is the passage, this quote from this guy, Grunville, Frederick versus Grunville, in this book called Games of the World. Though the modes of games play tend to remain constant, their symbolism is often influenced by contemporary events, particularly by the politics of the day. During the Napoleonic Wars, for example, chess sets were made showing Napoleon as general, Napoleon as first consul, Napoleon as emperor, always, of course, with the courtier assuming the position of the white king. And, you know, 2 years ago, when Kaepernick decided to kneel in opposition to police brutality, they were exposed. The captains of the NFL, Roger Goodell, and all of the white owners, all joined together against Kaepernick, kneeling against white supremacy. And that's what came to my mind when I read this thing about Napoleon in this chess set that they created, being the complete emperor, lord, ruler, and master. So when Kaepernick knelt, that was a direct threat. That's why it's so huge now. Now everybody's kneeling. Now there's a movement. And so when he did that initially, it was an outrage. Even the president got involved and made threats and made condescending remarks toward Kaepernick. Because again, you know, people are just asleep. They're not awake. The unconscious, subconscious message was that we are resisting your white slavery. We're not going for your white slavery anymore. And this is caused, you know, the backlash of white supremacists coming out in the opens with AR-15s and it's so amazing how she's able to tie all of this together with all of these essays. How, you know, the black balls being threatened, you know, the white annihilation being threatened, and just the thought of gun control laws. You know, I always wonder, why are they so adamant? I mean, damn, it's common sense laws. You know, you know, take AR-15s and AK-47s off of the streets. Why is that such a? And reading this made it crystal clear. You know, they look at that as castration.
Yeah. First of all, I love how Ben you read some of what I wanted to read. So I feel like similar things have been standing out to us, and so that's a good thing, being in sync with the elder. And here is the. I just want to piggyback on what Ben said because it's very important, and I believe that all sports, all games are connected and a reaction and a symbolic expression of racism, white supremacy. Like I said, the war games. The suggestion is on page 133 as well. The suggestion here is that all ball games and the white supremacy system and culture similarly play out at an unconscious level dominant political power concerns. Political power and the white culture is genetic survival through white supremacy. Such domination can be established and maintained in white and females, the white collective all of the balls, testicles of non-white men off and on the playing fields and all ball courts. In other words, the name of the real game, the power game, is continuous worldwide control of the testicles of all non-white men by white males and females as the only means of ensuring white genetic survival in a world where the melanin-producing genetic material of non-whites is dominant. Without control of the non-white genetic material, whites will be annihilated genetically. And we talked about the symbolic nature of these games and the effects that they have. But we didn't talk about how there's a part on, I don't know what page it is, but there was a little the American Association of Baseball had a little league, and whenever they took the little league to Taiwan, the Taiwanese children would beat the white kids at baseball, and they would lose every single year. And and the system of white supremacy, that cannot happen. So the American Little League baseball team was banned from playing against the Taiwanese kids, because symbolically you have white children who are being programmed and being groomed to know their superiority, going abroad and they're being defeated. Subconsciously and consciously, that is, combating racism, white supremacy. It's showing perseverance and strength and power in groups that are not supposed to be powerful, aka the Taiwanese kids. And keep in mind, they only banned them from fighting in Taiwan because they were losing. If they were winning, it wouldn't have been a problem. They were losing every single year. So you can't have colored people dominating in any sport, especially when children's minds are at stake. Keep in mind, this is a grooming process when kids play these sports. It's also, let me look at my notes. I have a lot of notes on chapter 10.
Okay, I was just
Oh, yeah.
can I talk about how in
Yeah.
the sports involving the brown balls is subconsciously conditions black males who participates in those sports um to want to have sex with white women because they are placing balls into white nets and between white goalposts and upright stand posts that signify white woman legs. That is why you have all these black athletes who end up with white women who are easy targets to be sexually aggressed onto by a white woman. I think that's really important to understand that these nets signify these white nets and these white goalposts signify the white female vagina orifice.
Yep. Well, I agree. Um, does anyone anything else to share about ball games?
Oh, I
I
have
do
one
want
more
to.
thing. I want to another quick thing about. I want to talk about hockey for a bit. Another hockey is a sport which black people aren't allowed to play. Another sport where it involves hitting a black round object into a white net, and I think that's the importance that that sport is played on a ice field represents the origins of white people having to live in a Caucasus Mountain and the ice cold and the ice terrain and that environment, and them being allowed to brutalize and beat up on each other during that sport is a representation. It symbolizes how when they were still having to deal in the ice age and whatnot, they were having to survive by killing and beating on each other. So I think that's a signal symbolizes that. I don't know if the white people who devised it are aware of it, but subconsciously, I am certain that's what that means.
That was very profound. Never thought of hockey that way. Um, um, going back just briefly to the dedication. The last sentence. They're forcing the oppressor of black people up against the psychological wall and thereby heightening the contradiction. Um, yeah, it's kind of difficult for them to rationalize and justify white supremacy when we break their asses off in every sport and everything we do. You know, we couldn't play golf, and then here comes Tiger. We could, and on, right? And like like Mary was mentioning before about the World Cup. Come on, the World Cup is bigger than the Super Bowl. World Cup is the biggest sport in the world. It's like the ultimate. And though there's 4 players walked during the World Cup, they walked off the French national team. They quit because they weren't being given the respect and the play time that they earned and that they deserved. So they walked off. And the French national team went into a funk, and they gave them what they wanted and put them in the game. And they, you know, that French national team ran over the other teams like they were amateurs. That French national team is like a dynasty now. They're badass because of the black players. It looks like an African team.
Literally.
Correct me.
So-
Correct me.
No, you're definitely right. It literally looks like an African team.
Oh yeah. And so the reason I bring that, okay, so that ties into here on page 34 about the anxiety, the anxiety, the fear and anxiety involved, associated with the continuous threat of white genetic survival must be played out symbolically through the numerous forms of ball games. All of these games are played mainly by men, are centered on who has the ball, and are concerned with who finally controls the ball when the game of power ends. The anxiety and tension that accompanies ball games is parallel to the anxiety and tension experienced at the thought in the white psyche of white genetic annihilation. Similarly, the increasing violence that accompanies ball games parallels the increasing level of violence needed to maintain global white supremacy as the entire non-white world seeks its liberation from white domination. And so, what a hell of an anxiety and fear that you have to deal with on a daily basis. Like for example, like during uh, during what is it during, when Nazi Germany was coming to power, was actually in power and claiming all of this supremacy. And Jesse Owens went to the Olympics and just blew the doors off all of the other track stars. Um, in case after case after case after case, it's like so amazing that it's right in front of our faces that we're actually, what they're actually doing is more than just projecting their fear of white annihilation and to dehumanize and to oppress black people. The big secret, the best kept secret, see, I'm a Garveyite. My grandparents were founders of the Universal Negro Improvement Association in the 20s in Oakland. And so we're black supremacists.
Mm.
And, we're so afraid, of speaking the truth, that black people are superior. We want equality. We run around talking about, oh, we just want equality. Fuck equality. Excuse my language. We don't want to be equal to someone who is totally fucked up, savage, self-loathing. We know all of the negative characteristics that we don't want to be. And the truth is, black people are superior. And that's what their whole mission in life is to totally eliminate that from the thought process of the children. That's why they will not. The ultimate solution is catching the children in second, third, and fourth grade and teaching them that Kemet and Kush brought civilization to Europe, that the Moors brought the number system, and and so on and so forth. Teach them the true history, and so as a result, they're going to realize that they are actually, and I'll go so far as to say, supreme beings. And I don't feel like I'm going out on a limb by saying that. We're supreme beings, even likened to God, because look, the Catholic Church, if you look at every deity in the Catholic Church, the main ones, they all have a son. Like Mary, when you see those images of the white Virgin Mary, there's a son behind her. These people aren't worshiping Jesus. They're not worshiping Mary and Jesus and Joseph. They're worshiping the Son. That's the secret, that the Son God Ra. You look at the Pope's hat. It's an exact replica of the Pharaoh's gear. If you see he wears a sun around his neck. It's a symbol of a sun. You see the symbol of the sun on his hat.
Yeah.
So they're worshiping the Black Madonna, the Black people that are baked by the sun. And I can go further. I can go way further. But they know who their father is. They know who their creator is, and they know that they're inferior to Black people.
Wow. Most certainly. Wow. Yeah, thank you so much for that articulation. Wow. Yeah, for me, I know that we are supreme beings. We, like, my understanding of like Kemetic knowledge is that you look towards the sun for energy source, like nutrition. You are here on this planet to raise to like God consciousness, and you do that by following Ma'at, and you do that also by eating the right foods and following the principles of each of the different each of the different deities represented as deities, but they're actually principles. And by doing all of this, you are standing 20 feet tall, which is what those tall statues represent. Is not even representing giants, is representing your higher consciousness, and something to attain to is something as part of living as the royalty that you are on this earth. So we are supreme, but in the way society, the way white supremacy has led us to believe is like, or not even led us to believe, try to do this reverse in language by making us call ourselves baby, and calling them man, and just constantly saying these spellings to ourselves, and saying that we just want our lives to matter, or just asking for equal rights. We're literally talking it into existence, so they're getting exactly what they want, because that belief perception is what we are acting like. The second we start acting like gods, then the energy field completely changes.
I agree. This is on page 141, and this kind of ties into culture and how culture and ball games have a direct correlation, and also subconsciously or consciously, we are aware that race and sports are connected. And here is a prime example of such. It's on page 141. After the Chinese, a non-white people under white supremacy domination, for many decades were able to chase the whites out of their country, the most popular ball game in China became ping pong. The object of this ball game is to smash a tiny white ball back and forth across a table, perhaps an unconscious retaliation for the humiliation imposed upon the Chinese people by the whites. The Chinese finally beat the white boss. Similarly, golf and baseball, two white ball games, have become most popular and have become the most popular ball games in Japan, a country of non-white people conquered, attacked, and humiliated in atomic war by white people. Perhaps at the conscious level, the Japanese non-white people believe they are imitating their conquerors, whom they admire. At the unconscious level, however, they are in turn humiliating the inadequacy of the white testicles or balls. The dynamic that motivates the conquered and the conquerors are never the same. Um, so yeah, if anyone doesn't have any more else things to say, I want to read one more part and then we can move on to chapter 11. But please share if you have anything to share. I feel like I covered the stuff I wanted to cover from this chapter. One of my favorite chapters in the book. Definitely worth reading. Uh,
Well, in a similar way that the rape, the rape, the person who suffers from rape, the child who's raped becomes the rapist. I like how she compared the Japanese, you know, to becoming, that's their way of becoming the conqueror, having been conquered, and in many ways I see my father having done that to me and my brothers, because he was abused, and that I'm using this as a personal example. I don't know if I should, but I don't think we're unique, that because I was conquered and I was oppressed, so that I can feel like the conqueror and the oppressor, I'm going to adopt the same tactics that the conqueror. And I think that's what we see going on uh, through the prism of I'm still on topic, I think, as far as sports, because it's through this we want it that we want to be conquerors, and so we're going to behave in the inhumane ways that you behave, whether it be through whatever medium, whatever source. uh we're gonna practice the dehumanization of other people, because that's what happened to us. I don't know if that even made sense.
no, it does. It does. I
Yeah.
mean, I was just having a conversation with my friend who's Chinese the other day, and I was showing her pictures of indigenous people who were like from a lot of Asian countries and Asian islands, and this person had no idea that her ancestors were black. A lot of Chinese people have no idea that Chinese people used to have black skin and brown skin. They're very unaware that their skin have been made white through colonization. Uh, there is a saying that goes that Africa had two great civilizations, ancient Africa and Asia. It's very true. Japanese people and Chinese people, people from all Asian countries are descendants of black people, descendants of Africans. Their skins are only yellow because of like being diluted through rape and through colonization via the hands of Europeans. Um, if, we, if everyone is done, I would love to just read this last bit. Um, so, ball games is on the last page. Ball games merely reflect the white collective's admiration and fear of black testicles, their contempt for white testicles, and their willingness to fight, no matter how violently, to maintain control of the balls on all fields and courts, which symbolize every place on earth. This neurotic preoccupation of whites is, of course, essential for white genetic survival of their race. The rules may change, but the real game is always the same. This deep significance of balls in the context of the white supremacy system and culture cannot be discussed overtly without causing the collapse of the entire political and psychological white supremacy edifice. Events in the world of symbolism are far ahead of events in the world of conscious reality because the former represents a more complete recording of the totality of reality data in a brain computer. Thus, through the world of symbolism, perhaps we can gain insight into the world of reality that must be mastered. By decoding and translating symbols, we can confront those aspects of reality that generally would prefer, sorry, that generally we would prefer to ignore. Norman O. Brown's statements in Love's Body sums it up. The axis on which world history turns its symbolisms. The axis of world history is making conscious making conscious unconscious. Ball games equal war of the balls, equal war of the testicles, equal war of the genes, equal race war. I don't want to finish on that. Let me know if you have any questions about that ending. Um, if not, we can move on to chapter 11. If you have anything you want to add on, like please do. Now, forever hold your peace.
You said forever hold your peace. You know, I always have a little something. At the end of the day, it's all for the purpose of extracting the resources from Africa. Maybe, you know, when this was written in the 70s, she nailed everything as far as I'm concerned. But I don't think the current issue of dominating and controlling the natural resources was really at the forefront of her philosophy.
Well, like I think isn't the getting Africa's resources, isn't that only allowed possible through racism and white supremacy? That's just one of the many perks the whites have gotten from white supremacy is being able to get everything they need from wherever country they've dominated. And we have like books like how Europe undeveloped Africa, which talks about how, you know, we're well aware of Africa being drained for many centuries now of its resources.
Also, to just respond to what Ben said, I think racism and white supremacy justifies the invasion of Africa. People think of Africa as this undeveloped place and that Africans should be thankful white people are there. Like they're the saviors of Africa. They see Africans as people who weren't doing anything with their resources. So basically, they kind of just went there, exploited it, and colonized it, and justified it by portraying Africans as these savage people who didn't have their own language or their own republic, or about all these things were untrue because like in this group we talk about a lot of other books. I'm learning that Black people had the first socialist democratic voting system, and that Black people, had their own languages and all these great things, these great achievements that were just erased from history. I think in the U.S. at least, how we teach history, 4,000 years of history is deleted from like our history. So we don't talk about how the Moors ruled Spain for 700 years and how bullfighting is a direct symbol of Blacks being chased out of Spain. We don't talk about how a lot of people in Spain have color now because the Moors had occupied Spain for 700 years. It's just like we don't talk about how white people set intentions to create mulattoes as to be used as a weapon against black people. You know, it's a lot of like stuff that's not really discussed. And we're also reading Urugu, and it talks about the European as silly. Europeans have a need to objectify nature. Uh, Africa is one of the most highly populated areas of resources. So, of course, when Europeans went there, they conspired to rape the land and rape the people. And on a grand scale, meaning that on a scale that would be infinite because they're still there, you know, doing what they've been doing. Um, any response? If not, we can move on to chapter 11.
Yeah, in response to the bullfighting, I found that so interesting listening to that video, listening to Dr. Frances Welsing explain it out as well. The fact that they use like a red, they get the bull angry and they use like a red flag like as the target for the bull to like run into, so it gets it at the back of its neck. It's like almost like a symbolic like representation of how they get the black man. You get angry, you do something stupid, they get you in the system and they kill you or castrate you how they can. And it's like they constantly through their different games tell you the story of just literally reiterating their story or their message or intention towards black people and the fear of their inadequacy. China.
Ben, you're muted.
Oh no, I was just saying this is so enlightening.
All right.